with the season thankfully done for the Mavericks, I figure why not go through the season that the team had, the players, the coaching staff, all of that. We're going to do the classic age-old, let's grade how these guys did. We're going through each and every player who finished the season with the team. Okay, so there's not going to be Luka Doncic here. You're not going to see, like Maxi Kleber, although I don't really know what we could say about Maxi Kleber's season. You're not going to see those guys, Quentin Grimes, just because, again, they didn't finish the season with the team. I don't want to sit here and grade. I think it was like 25 players or something like that ended up getting minutes for the Mavericks. I'm also not including the two-way guys unless they signed a guaranteed contract by the end of the season. Okay, because the way I'm looking at this is the Mavs are at an interesting crossroads. That goes without being said, right? And yes, this is Mavs 2025 grades by Mr. Bias. This is how I'd like for you guys to refer to me from here on out. Mr. Biased, okay? Well, we need to be a little bit more formal. So Mr. Bias, you can address me as Mr. Bias. Dr. Bias, that works as well, although I'm not a doctor, but I will accept that if that's what floats your boat. I don't know. Well, it's up to you. But, the Mavs are at an interesting crossroads this upcoming offseason. You got a handful of guys who are free agents. Guys like Exum, Dinwiddie. These guys are free agents that you have to decide whether or not you want to bring back. Kyrie Irving is a player option. Dealing with an ACL injury, you got to figure that into the equation. A bunch of young guys that you have to really sit down and look at and think, how do these guys contribute to our future? How do these guys contribute to the future outlook of this team? Are these guys that we feel good about moving forward? Are these guys that we feel like we can plug into our rotation, or do we want to upgrade there? These are all things that the Mavericks are going to have to factor into the equation this offseason. And so we're going to look at all of the players that played for the Mavs this season, that finished the season on the team, and we'll give them a grade. And we're going to be harsh here because, like I said, it's difficult times ahead for the Mavs, a lot of decisions that need to be made. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off and talk about these guys and how they did this season and how they performed. Let's start here. Ownership. Patrick Dumont, he gets an F. The Dumonts, the Adelsons, whoever, Mavs ownership as a whole, they get an F. What a catastrophic season this is for a franchise. I thought they're terrible. I think they're the worst. I think, unfortunately, it appears for us Mavs fans as if we have a huge ownership problem on our hands. And you want to know something? You want to know something that really pisses me off, right? Look, you're going to make the trade. Okay, I disagree. I'd give you an F just for the trade itself. You're the owner of the team. You allowed this to happen. The owner could say, wait, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to trade? No, you're fired, right? That's the power that an owner has. So the fact that Dumont didn't do that, boom, F. You know what? But if you wanted to really stand on business after the trade and be like, yo, this is our guy. This is what we wanted to do. It is what it is. Like, enough of this. Like, stop crying, okay? This is the trade that we wanted to do. You'll see, right? I would at least feel, I don't even want to say better, but I would at least be like, all right, well, at least they're feeling good about it. But after the season to come out, what we've heard over the past few days where it's like, well, Dumont didn't really know it was going to be this bad. And he kind of feels a little blindsided. And he's going to bring in some more experienced guys to work next to Nico. F. What a catastrophic failure on your end. That didn't cross your mind when your GM brought the idea of trading a 25-year-old face of the franchise super duper megastar for the next 10 years. That thought didn't cross your mind then. It wasn't until afterwards when you saw how pissed off everyone was that it crossed your mind. Okay, well, that just goes to show you're incredibly out of touch and you're terrible at your job. So yay, woohoo. Dallas Mavericks ownership will be terrible for the next 10 years. Great. I guess I could say at least for Dumont, he's maybe even recognized his mistakes and has said, okay, maybe we need to get some more guys in here who know what they're doing. But either way, F. Nico Harrison, F. Need I say more? His approval rating was very high before this season. And, some of the moves he made in the offseason I thought were pretty good. And we'll get to some of those guys here in a bit. But, yeah, trading away Luka, what's there to say other than this is an F? Now, at least I'll give Nico this that I'm not giving Dumont, which is at least Nico is just like, it's become the joke. We just feel like defense wins championships. It's become a running joke. But at least he is kind of standing on business a little bit. Now, the way the Mavs handled the trade, post the trade, especially from the higher-ups, was, I thought, horrible. But the trade itself was terrible. He got absolutely swindled. Okay. If you want to talk us into how you got to the conclusion that you needed to trade Luka Doncic, that's one thing entirely. And I'm really diving deep here. I know we haven't talked about this much recently. I know we've talked about the trade recently, but really diving deep into the process because this feels like a ripping the Band-Aid off. Let's move on from the season entirely thing for me. If you're watching this on the YouTube Clip channel, I'm live on Bleacher Report right now, by the way, every Thursday, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time over on the Mavs Bleacher Report page. But, you got worked in the negotiations. That's the problem. You got absolutely sauced and tossed in the negotiations. You lost. You're the general manager of a team. Your job as a general manager is to put your team in the best position possible, especially when you're working out trades, when you're negotiating trades, and you failed to do that. You got a horrid return on what should have been the hottest commodity in the entire league, or at least one of the hottest commodities in the entire league. One of the hottest commodities, frankly, the league has ever seen. So that's an F right there. All right, Jason Kidd. I'm giving him a D. Now, if it weren't for the fact that I know it came out recently that, Kidd was a little bit blindsided by this. Look, I think what you're seeing now that the season is over, everybody is in it, is making haste to try and save their asses, right? Everyone's making haste to try and save their asses. No, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. Right? That's what you're hearing. Maybe Kidd didn't know the trade was about to happen, but he was absolutely in lockstep with the thinking. That's what I believe 100%. I don't think there's anything you can say to convince me otherwise. I think it was Tim McMahon. Tim McMahon sort of kind of confirmed my thoughts on a podcast yesterday when he was basically like, yeah, maybe Jason Kidd wasn't making calls or wasn't in a business meeting or anything like that, but he was sharing a lot of those frustrations. And then I think Tim McMahon said, and I'm paraphrasing here, something along the lines of Kidd joking around, being like, maybe we have to trade his ass because they were so frustrated with some of the things. Well, guess what? They did trade his ass. So he gets a D. The reason I'm not giving Kidd an F, though, is I do think he did a solid job this year with this team. Now, not like a coach of the year level, right? But to keep the team afloat, to get the team to the play-in tournament, to coach them to a play-in win against a god-awful Kings team, given all of the injuries, given, just the manpower that they've missed throughout the course of the season, given the trades that happened, I never once felt like the team quit. And that does matter to me. I think that starts with coaching. So that's the reason he's not getting an F. Now, we can go into schemes, X's and O's, all this stuff with Kidd. But, I can't help but feel this was year 4 of the Kidd experience in Dallas. There will be a year 5. I highly doubt he's fired. I think it's likelier that he just looks around and goes, I should get out of here while I can before I have like a nightmare season next year and my like future status as a coach in the league is up in the air. Like maybe I can just get out now. I think that could maybe happen. I would say a slim chance. But they played hard for him. And through his 4 years, I feel like the team usually plays very hard for Kidd. And that matters to me. That does. So he gets a D instead of an F. Kyrie. So I just went in terms of, I just sorted minutes per game, and that's how we got the list here. Kyrie, performance-wise, deserves an A, in my opinion. But I'm factoring in everything into the equation, and the fact that, he ended the season with a very unfortunate torn ACL injury. It's going to have to be a B, right? His future's up in the air. He has a player option this year. I have to imagine he's staying with the Mavericks, right? I feel very confident about that. But, we don't know when he'll be back next year. If he'll be back, we assume he'll be back. The reports are maybe around January. That feels very optimistic. Even if it's around the All-Star break, the chances that Kyrie comes back next season anywhere near the level he was at this year is very slim. And given his age, who knows what that means for Kyrie Irving moving forward. But I do think he was incredible this year. Very much deserving of the All-Star nod that he got. He was 25-5 this season when Luka didn't play. He had the Mavericks won the minutes this season when Kyrie Irving was on the floor and Luka Doncic was off. So I thought he did a tremendous job. And following the trade, not only were they without Luka now, who already had missed a month up until that point, but not only were they without Luka, but they were without AD because AD only played in 2 quarters in these games. And they were without a handful of other guys as well. Dereck Lively was out. Gaffford started to miss some time. They were 5-5 in the 10 games after the trade for Kyrie. 40 minutes per game, 29 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, 4 assists per game on the Kyrie efficiency that was still elite. It wasn't as good as we've seen Kyrie be efficiency-wise, only because so much was asked of him. But he was incredible in those games, and then unfortunately he tore his ACL. Now, did all those minutes and stuff lead to him tearing his ACL? I'm actually personally of the belief that no, I can't say with certainty that he tore his ACL because of all those minutes. Kyrie himself hasn't said it. Doctors on Twitter, sports doctors have said that's not the reason. It was just a very unfortunate injury. But given his injury history, and he even missed time earlier in the season, he had a back injury. 40 minutes per game for a guy like Kyrie was dangerous, and you were opening yourself up to the possibility of an injury. And that's unfortunately what happened. So a great season for Kyrie Irving. The only reason this is not an A, and I do think he would have been an All-NBA player if he stayed healthy. The only reason this is not an A is because, because he got injured. Hot Mic User is in the chat. Was that the name of that radio website platform back in the day? I think I did that when I was really young. Hot Mic, where you could make your own radio show and people could call in. I'm pretty sure I had one of those when I was very young, but yeah. So Kyrie gets a B. This next one was difficult for me. I went back and forth a little bit. PJ Washington. And again, I'm being harsh here because we really got to sit down and we really got to think about this and think about where we stand with some of these guys. PJ Washington's coming up on a contract extension. He's contract extension eligible this year. I think the most the Mavs can give him is $22 million is something I saw. Now, I personally would be okay with that. He played in 57 games this year, had 3 different stretches where he missed 4 games or more, dealt with ankle injuries throughout the season. Another guy that maybe the Mavericks rushed back at a certain point. I'm just now realizing PJ's got a tattoo of what looks to be an alien abduction scene down here. I had never put 2 and 2 together, but there appears to be an alien abduction scenario happening down here on Kyrie's right, or PJ's right forearm. So that's something to monitor moving forward. Is potentially, is PJ Washington an alien and what that means for the team moving forward. But it was an interesting season for PJ. I thought he did play pretty well in stretches. For a lot of these guys, I look at their stats post the Luka trade because, well, that's the reality of the team moving forward. 15 points per game for PJ, 6 rebounds, 2 stocks per game, near 40% from 3, and that's really the big difference maker for him because he's going to have to be a floor spacer. And even though his percentages were high, one of the things that worries me a little bit moving forward is it didn't feel like teams really respected PJ when he was on the court. He wasn't like a real legitimate floor spacer. And when you're playing next to Anthony Davis and when you're going to be the 3, assuming assuming the team stays relatively the same heading into next season, who knows? But if you're going to be the 3 in lineups with AD and Lively or Gaffford, you're going to have to hit threes at a high enough clip that defenses really respect you. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Mavericks lost the minutes when him and AD shared the floor together, just because I do think it's a strange spacing thing. So I'm going a C for PJ. A missed time, was injured quite a bit. I do think defensively there were moments where I felt he took a little bit of a step back from last year. But all in all, I think it was a solid season. I think if he were healthy and played more games, I'd be very comfortable going B territory here. But just another one of these guys that missed a huge chunk of time for the Mavericks this season. Max Christie, so part of the Luka Doncic trade, obviously, struggled with what I wanted to give him. I ended up landing on C only because, going back to what I said at the top, let's look at this and let's assess the situation for a few of these guys and see how do we feel about these guys heading into next season. Christie's an interesting one because I don't really know. First 7 games after the trade, the jokes were running and people ran with this and acted like this was something people actually said, but it was like, oh my God, this is actually the Max Christie trade. Could he turn into an SGA type? He blossoms into a star out of nowhere. 17 points per game in those 7 games, 47% from 3, taking nearly 12 shots per game. Was aggressive, was hunting his own shots, had a few ball screens here and there, possessions as a pick and roll ball handler, pull up 3, shooting off of screens, shooting in transition. It was pretty impressive on top of really solid defense, right? Now, unfortunately for Christie, it pretty much went downhill after that. The following 25 games after the first 7, only 9 points per game, only 33% from 3 on top. Worst of all, nearly 4 less field goal attempts per game. So what Christie strikes me as is a very, 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 and he's still young. I think he's 21 years old, maybe 22. A very, very confidence-driven player. And once that confidence gets shaky a little bit, we have problems. That concerns me because we've seen these guys come in and out of Dallas, the Josh Greens of the world. Those are difficult players to build around. They just are. They're scary players to have, stamped in your rotation. So this is kind of where we're at. There's some interesting stuff, though. When he shared the floor with AD, the Mavericks had a plus 10 net rating. So helping out in those lineups. Again, you need floor spacers if you're going to do this big lineup. You need floor spacers next to AD anyways, but you need floor spacers if you're going to do this big lineup. Christie's going to be very important in that role. It does feel like he was, he's a superstar merchant who's not really, he's a role guy, so this makes sense. But plus 10, the Mavericks were when him and AD shared the floor. Mavs are plus 2 when him and Kyrie shared the floor. The Mavs were minus 7 in Max Christie minutes, net rating wise, when neither of those guys were on the court, which I guess that makes sense. Right. But I'll be interested to see what we get from Max Christie next year. Is he going to be one of these guys that's just annoying all his whole career? Or are we getting like a legit guy that you can plug into the rotation and feel good about? I guess I'll have to wait and see. AD gets a C for me as well. Played 9 games, not including the playing games, because for some reason, the playing games aren't part. I don't understand. The playing games don't count towards stats. There's actually no basketball reference. You can't find stats for playing games. I mean, what the hell's going on? Like, why is that a thing? You're telling me those games didn't happen? I watched them with my own 2 eyes. AD was awesome in the Kings game. It was awesome in the Grizzlies game as well, even though the Mavs lost that game. He was really the only one that came to play there. But played 9 regular season games with the Mavs, missed 19 of them. Defense does win championships. As Nico Harrison has pointed out a million times, those 2.5 quarters, if you were to take those 2.5 quarters and stretch it out over the course of an 82-game season, the Mavericks would go 82-0, and they would win the championship. So that's what we do have going for us after this trade. But, as I said, 9 games with AD. They were 6-3 in the games that AD played. So we do have that going for us. Averaged 20 points per game. They were a minus when he was on the court. And I think what's a little bit concerning with me is the defense didn't look as dominant as I was hoping. Now, AD was coming back from an injury, and then when the double bigs came back, Gaffford was coming back from an injury, Lively was coming back from an injury, PJ was working back from an ankle injury. All of these guys were working their way back from injury, so I don't want to put too much into what we saw because I do think it'll get better over time. But another interesting thing with AD, he's not a guy who's going to create his own offense consistently. He's not a guy you're going to give the ball to and say, get the hell out the way, everyone. AD is going to carry us. He does need stuff set up for him, right? He needs entry passes. He needs lobs. He needs these things. He needs, pocket passes, clean passes, and pick and rolls. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I was like, what's, because I know what the number is with Spencer Dinwiddie, and God bless the guy. I know what it is. What's AD's numbers when he shares the floor with some of the Mavs' other guards? So the Mavs guard that AD spent the most time with this year was, unfortunately, Spencer Dinwiddie. And again, God bless him, but unfortunately, Spencer Dinwiddie. The Mavs had a minus 8.5 net rating when those two were on the floor together. It was plus 13 with Brandon Williams, plus 6 with Kyrie Irving, and plus 28 with Exum. Small sample with all of those guys. Obviously, super small sample with Kyrie, but also a small sample with Exum. Small sample with Brandon Williams, but given how many minutes these guys played, a solid chunk, I guess. Basically, it goes to show, give me a point guard who can just create stuff consistently, and I feel pretty good about where I'm at with AD. Spencer Dinwiddie is just not that guy, and God bless him. We'll get to Spencer Dinwiddie here in a bit. Naji Marshall. Tremendous season for Naji Marshall. If you're wondering why I'm not at an A with Naji, I'll get to why here in a bit. But 69 games, had this weird plague-like illness. I watched Nosferatu not too long ago, and all I could think about was Naji Marshall start of the season. I thought maybe Naji Marshall got sick at the start of the season with some type of vampire plague that had bestowed upon us from a small German village. That's kind of where I was at, right? But he had a great season, man. He really did. From March onwards, he's 18 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists per game, was the Mavs starting point guard by the end of the season. That's how dire the guard situation got for the Mavs. But it also goes to show how good Naji Marshall was. They were confident enough with him being the starting point guard. That floater that's just unguardable when he gets to the paint. He's so herky-jerky. That creates an advantage for himself. It creates an advantage for other players on the team. 52% from the field. And, I thought offensively he had a fantastic season. Now, the reason I'm not giving him an A, if you're wondering, the time missed, it's not that concerning to me, the time missed. What is more alarming to me, because if the Mavericks did find themselves in a playoff series, this would have been a big deal. And if Naji Marshall is on the team, I say if, because you look at contracts, Naji Marshall's a guy who could get traded for a bigger player, a bigger return. I don't know. The reason why I don't have him an A is he was 27% from 3. Just was not consistent from 3. It got to the point towards the end of the season where defenses just straight up did not guard him. And again, it made it difficult for some of the other guys on the floor, especially when you're trying to play bigger. You need floor spacing, and Naji just didn't provide that. And also, defensively, I think we got a little bit less than advertised with Naji this year. Not that I thought he was terrible or anything like that, but the Mavs were better defensively when he was off the court. I thought there were some plays and really games and chunks of time where I just think Naji had a hard time keeping anyone in front of him. And when you're going to be tasked, especially if you're going big, tasked with being a guy who probably picks up the other team's best ball handler or at least best guard, it needs to be a little bit better. So we'll see about that heading into next season, again, assuming he's on the team. But all in all, I thought it was a really nice season for Naji. I thought he was great. If we're going to do the Naji Marshall, Dereck Jones Jr. comparison, because that's something that we do, I do feel as though for what the Mavericks needed, Naji Marshall was probably better for them. So Naji gets a B. Klay Thompson, I'm also giving a B. Thought he was just solid, man. Came into a nightmarish situation. But I thought, as sort of the oldest guy on the team, coming from a championship place in Golden State, coming from a dynasty organization in Golden State, thought he said all the right things. Thought he kind of stabilized things for the Mavs, and they really need stabilization, at least from just a voice of reason in the locker room. And, I didn't think he played terribly either. 72 games is some of the most on the team. 14 points per game, nearly 40% from three on nearly 8 attempts per game. So, still had moments where you can't leave me open. His floor spacing was incredibly valuable. And the lineups where Klay was with just one of the lead guards prior to the Luka trade this year were fantastic. It was just, the floor spacing was incredible. I was impressed by his passing ability. The two-man game with him and some of the Mavs bigs I thought was impressive. Defensively, yeah, he's getting older. He had some moments where I thought he sat in the chair and looked good, but other than that, But, it's about what I expected from Klay. And given the nightmarish situation that he found himself in, I thought he handled himself really well. I've got no complaints with Klay Thompson. So here's one that I'll need to explain. I know, guys. I'm going Spencer Dinwiddie a B. Now before, and I'm just not realizing this picture's from like 3 years ago. Before you guys get angry and upset, Spencer Dinwiddie led the team in minutes this year. Was a minimum contract guy that was brought in to be the 13th, 14th, 15th guy on the team. I'm giving him a B, not because I thought he was sensational or anything like that, but for a vet minimum guy who got thrusted into minutes that he probably shouldn't have had, I thought he did fine. Of course, he had stretches that made you want to rip your hair out. I think back to that Miami game where Dinwiddie was awful and the Mavs lost and we were all irate and upset about it. But he also had games that he won for the Mavs this year, almost single-handedly, especially when Luka was out, Kyrie was out, and the Mavs just needed somebody. I thought that Spence, did what the most you could have asked out of Spence. Again, frustrating at times, absolutely. Absolutely sometimes, though, where you won the Mavs a game or two. And I think he does deserve some props for how he came in, how he played as a vet minimum guy. If we were just doing like a draft, what were some of the best value contracts, best vet minimum contracts this year? I think Spencer Dinwiddie's on that list. So that's where I'm at with him. I know that's a bit surprising given how we talk about Spencer Dinwiddie from time to time, but all things considered, I don't think we're talking about expectations, players playing your expectations. If Spence came back next year, am I kind of done with the experience? Yeah, I am. But if you go out and make other moves for guards and Spence is like your fourth or fifth guard and he's back on a vet minimum, I really wouldn't mind that, to be honest with you. Dereck Lively, I'm giving a C. Now let's start here. I think Lively, second year, maybe didn't take some leaps that we were expecting. The three ball, the jumper, we were all sort of hoping that we'd get to the point where Dereck Lively was shooting the ball. Never got there, never even attempted a three this season. Or at least I don't think he did off the top of my head. I did think he looked a lot better this year than last year. I do not think he's a Luka merchant. I've seen people say that. I thought defensively, I don't know if the numbers jump out at you. I don't know if the numbers scream huge development, but just watching him play, I just thought his positioning was better. I thought his IQ was better. That just comes with a year of playing, staying down on fakes, not fouling, moving your feet, funneling guys, knowing where your help is, sitting on a chair when you're switched out in the perimeter. And I thought he did a really good job in those situations this year. And of course, when you're a big guy and a guard cooks you, like that's all anyone's going to think about. That's all anyone's going to talk about. But I thought he did a really solid job on those possessions. And I did think he was awesome defensively this season. So I think we saw real legitimate improvements from him there. Mavs defense was nearly 11 points per 100 possessions better when he was on the floor. I mean, that's a huge on-off swing. Another big key development, his free throw percentage up 13 points from 50% to 63. 63 is still not great. We need to work on that number. But the free throw shooting was a huge concern for me entering the season because you can't be 50%. 50% is a scary, dangerous place to be. And also the lineups where he was next to AD, the Mavs were +6 net rating with those lineups. There's some lineup data with the Mavs that you look at, especially towards the end of the season. I don't know, not a lot. It's a very small sample. But there's some lineup data where you're like, okay, all right, there could be some stuff here. And the lineup with Anthony Davis, PJ Washington, Dereck Lively, again, small sample, but +8.5 net rating with a 105 defensive rating. I mean, that's pretty fucking good. Right. Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on Bleacher Report. My bad if I did, if I'm not. But that's pretty darn good. That's pretty, what I like to say, flipping good. You guys know I don't like to cuss that often, so my bad, guys. Anyways, the reason why I'm giving him a C, you're wondering, is 57 games. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at someone else. The reason why I'm giving him a C is 36 games. I mean, we're 2 seasons into Dereck Lively's career. I think we're about 80 regular season games through those 2 seasons. It's concerning. And there are kind of freak injuries with him. But the reality is he is injured. He's injured a lot. He missed a ton of time this season. And it's just something to watch. And it's something that I am concerned about. So that's why it's a C and not a B, which is probably where I'd be at. We'll see. We'll see what comes next with him offensively. That's probably the next big one. Daniel Gaffford, I am giving a B to. 57 games, that's a career low outside of the 2020 and 2021 shortened seasons. But he averaged a career high in points, 12.3 points per game. And another guy that I've heard people say is a Luka Merchant. Obviously, yes, rim running bigs are going to look much better with Luka Doncic next to him. But Daniel Gaffford, in 11 games after Luka got injured and then after Dereck Lively got injured and Gaffford was being asked to play nearly 30 minutes a game over this stretch, 11 games, 28 minutes per game, 17.5 points, nearly 10 rebounds, over 3 blocks per game, 70% from the field. It was the best I've seen him look his entire career. And I think if you were to give like individual awards to guys this season, Daniel Gaffford is the most improved player on the Dallas Mavericks. I thought he was great this year. I believe, off the top of my head, I vaguely remember this, he was second in total blocks for like a huge chunk of the NBA season before he got hurt and before Wemby got hurt, because Wemby obviously was leading that. Wemby still might have led the league in blocks. Did Wemby lead the league? Wemby had such a massive lead in blocks per game. He might have still led the league in blocks. I'm not entirely sure. But Daniel Gaffford had a great season, and he's another interesting guy. Him and PJ, both entering the final year of their contracts, both contract extension eligible. He is a guy, you just look at it, you've got Lively, you've got AD. He's a guy who could be traded. Right? He's a guy who could be traded. Just something to monitor entering the offseason. Caleb Martin, I'm giving a D, 14 games for him. Dealt with injuries. The hip injury he had after the trade took him a while to come back into the mix for the Mavericks. And I did think he was fine when he played. Nothing too crazy. I'm giving him a D because it took him forever to get into the lineup. By the time he did get into the lineup, it felt like all hope was lost for this Mavs team. And obviously, it's hard to ignore Quentin Grimes popping off for Philly after this trade. But the Mavs defense was 4.5 points better when he was on the court. And that does pass the eye test. I thought he looked pretty good defensively for the Mavs. And there were some lineups that they would run out there where Caleb Martin just felt like it made it happen defensively. You saw his versatility on display. I'm thinking too, I think it was a Magic game in the regular season where I thought it was Caleb Martin's best game, and I could be misremembering. This is off the top of my head. But I thought it was his best game of the season, and you saw a lot of defensive versatility, picking up some of the Magic bigger wings, had possessions guarding some of their bigs like Wendell Carter, and guarding guys like Cole Anthony as well. You see that sort of defensive versatility on display. Now, offensively, he was dreadful. 5 points per game, 25% from three, 38% from the field, had 0 points combined in the 2 play-in games. That's the problem, right? That's the problem. So he gets a D. I'm giving Exum a D. Thought he was fine. He played 20 games. That's the problem with Dante Exum. He's a free agent entering the season. Where does he end up? I'm not entirely sure. I like him a lot as a player. I really do. And I thought, especially towards the end of the season when he came back miraculously from that wrist injury, the Mavs had no guards. There was times, even in just like the 4 or 5 games he ended up playing there at the end, times where I was like, my God, the Mavs just desperately need a guy like this who can push the pace, who can get into the paint, kick out, find open guys, find the bigs, kick out the shooters. Just sorely missed towards the end of the season for the Mavs. I thought he was good. He's getting a D, though, because he played 20 games. And I don't know. I really don't know what to do with Exum. Would love to have him back, honestly. If Exum's a vet minimum guy still, I would love to bring him back if I'm the Mavs. But he's just not somebody that I could rely on in any real way. It'd just be a luxury if Exum's healthy. That's just the way you'd have to look at it. But he gets a D for me. Hardy gets an F, full stop. And this might sound mean, but let's walk through it right here. The Mavs were 6 points per 100 possessions better, or 6 points per 100 possessions worse when he was on the floor. Might not be fair to him. Probably some garbage time minutes thrown in there. Played in 57 games. 8 points per game this season, 38% from three. Those aren't terrible numbers, like 38% from three, hovering around 40. That's where he needs to be. And there were stretches where he was red hot from three. And that's kind of, I think, the allure of Jaden Hardy is, can we convince ourselves that he's going to be a knockdown 3-point shooter at some point in his career? The problem is everything else, right? And he fell out of their rotation over the course of the season. And even when the Mavs desperately needed guards, he found himself buried at the end of the bench. A guy we're going to get to here in a second, Brandon Williams, completely overtook him in the rotation when he was on the floor. So for Hardy, I'm giving him an F only because it's year 3 of Jaden Hardy. He just signed a contract extension. It's like go time for him. He needs to prove that he's an NBA player. He needs to prove that he's somebody that teams could plug into their future plans. He needs to prove that he's somebody that can play at an NBA level. And I did not leave this season feeling that Jaden Hardy is at that level. He's decision-making with the ball in his hands leaves a lot to be desired. His self-creation leaves a lot to be desired. He's not, I've heard people compare him to Anthony Simons. He's nowhere near the athlete Anthony Simons is. I've seen people, very optimistically, and not really this year, but in years past, compare him like, could he have a development leap like a Tyrese Maxey did? He's nowhere near the quick twitch athlete Tyrese Maxey is. And even though Jaden Hardy is skilled, he doesn't possess anywhere near the skill that those guys have to create their own shots. He's not the absolute microwave red hot shooter that Anthony Simons is. I don't know what Hardy's career holds. On top of that, he also was like top 6, top 7 in the league in fouling 3-point shooters. These are just the bonehead stuff that happens from time to time. You're like, dude, what the hell are you doing out there, man? Like, how are we still fouling this many 3-point shooters? How are you consistently doing this? It makes no sense. So I don't know. I'm not sure what the future holds for Hardy. It does feel like he's someone who probably finds himself in a trade this offseason if the Mavs want to make a move, but I don't know. Like, what's his value going to be? If I'm a team, am I like super pumped about taking on that contract? I really don't think so. So he gets an F for me because honestly, again, this was a perfect opportunity. Luka goes out with an injury. Then Kyrie goes out for an injury. This is a perfect opportunity to really put yourself out there and say, hey, I got us. That we see this all the time from guys. This like March run where I got thrusted into the lineup. It's March. For half the time we're playing teams I don't care about the game whatsoever. Like, it's time for me to go out and get my stats. So, the season ends, you're like, well, you saw what he did in March. Like, if he could do that over the course of a season, you didn't even get that from Hardy. And he had an ankle injury, at the worst possible time because he got hurt right as everyone else was getting hurt. So, it's an F. Brandon Williams is the only A on this list. And, what could you say about Brandon Williams? A 10-day contract guy, a two-way guy, who played his way into earning a guaranteed 2-year guaranteed contract, 11 games in March, 26 minutes per game, 16.5 points, 4.5 assists, 54% from the field. And I think more interesting than anything else, 4 free throw attempts per game, 3 3-point attempts per game. Somebody who can attack the rim, somebody who can get in the paint, can beat defenders one-on-one, is incredibly quick, was a knockdown 3-point shooter, especially on catch and shoots, and gave the Mavs something they did not have after Kyrie got hurt, which is a guard who can consistently create for himself, a guard who can beat defenders, and a guard who can get in the paint and then play make off of that. His ability to find the bigs when he gets in the paint the bigs in the dunker spot, like drop-offs and stuff like that, is remarkable. Remarkable. It really is. So he gets an A. Omax gets an F. Not really fair to him. Injuries, again, for him. 52 games, out for the season with a hand injury. Very similar to the Hardy stuff. This was a perfect opportunity for a guy like Omax to make some noise in a season from hell for the Mavs. Perfect opportunity to make some noise. Perfect opportunity to cement yourself as a guy who can play moving forward. Yeah. Just got a notification. Evan Mobley has won Defensive Player of the Year. So congratulations to Evan Mobley. Omax will not be winning Defensive Player of the Year or all defense. 23% from three. The Mavs were minus 12 when Omax was on the floor outside of garbage time. So in any real minutes that Omax played, the Mavs were awful. They had a 104 offensive rating. Omax just looks like he's still not ready. And he's a second-year guy, but we've yet to see anything from Omax. And I really hope this year could have been a step forward for him. But unfortunately, I think in some ways it was actually a step back. Like, I didn't see anything from Omax that led me to believe that he's somebody who you can feel confident about in your rotation moving forward. He gets an F. Dwight Powell gets a C. This wasn't even intentional. I'm just not realizing it. Not even intentional that the picture here is him, I'm assuming, getting hit in the face. He gets a C because it's Dwight Powell. He's never going to leave the team. Build a statue. We love you so much, Dwight. The Mavs as a team get an F. Need I say more? We've never seen a season like this ever in the history of sports. So he gets an F. Slightly Biased gets an A, though. It was a hell of a season from Slightly Biased. Walked us through the dark days, and we'll continue to do so in the dark days ahead. You look great, man. And regardless of what people say, you've done a great job this year. And I know people will say things like, why are you talking about other teams? They have no idea what they're talking about, and their opinion does not matter at all. Okay, you've done a great job, buddy. You've done a fantastic job. Mwah. We love you. We love you so much.